If everyone's able, if they could please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. If you're not able, it's understood. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Dave, if you would read zoning application.
We have two applications on the agenda tonight. The first one is 257 Isabella Street. The second one is the Pennsylvania Real Estate Investment Trust application at the Plymouth Meeting Mall site. The first one, 257 Isabella Street, is Kathleen Ramsey on an application for a variance from Plymouth Township zoning ordinance number 342 as amended, Article 10, Section 1000. The variance requested is as follows: to allow a lumber yard. The property is located at 257 Isabella Street in a commercial zoning district. So if Mrs. Ramsey is here, you're good to go. I know Mrs. Ramsey was there.
Put her finger up and then walked away for a second, Dave.
Okay.
Mrs. Ramsey, are you able to proceed? Mrs. Ramsey, are you able to present your case?
Mrs. Ramsey?
I'm wondering if her audio is not on.
Okay. Mrs. Ramsey? Okay.
Hello. There we go.
All right, present your case, please, Mrs. Ramsey.
Okay, sorry, I'm new at this and I'm not the best. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it's understandable. There's challenges these days. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you. Okay, this concerns 257 Isabella Street in Plymouth. Currently, we're storing some lumber there from trees that were cut down. I went to the zoning board back in February when I let Tim put his wood down there, and the zoning said it was okay. I spoke with not Jim Wallace. Who's the other guy? I don't know. He was out front, but he went in and talked to Dave, and Dave said it was okay. And then there was a complaint that filed later, like early summer, I guess. That I don't know what the complaint was, whatever it was. You know, I'm like I said, I'm new at this. I've never done this before. Anyway, I'm asking for a variance or for to have outside storage there, the storage of lumber and other contractors for equipment like landscapers, etc. That property has always been basically a contract yard or commercial industrial. When my father died and my mother died, And my brother Jay and I took possession. I was not aware that it was no longer, I could no longer do that. Have people come in there and store their equipment or work out of there. I was told because I was considered a new business. So I have not been able to do anything with the property, and finally I did it. Tim's Tree Care come in there, and at that time it was okay. Now it's not. I don't know why I would not be grandfathered. It was my father's property. Now it's mine and my brother's, and it's basically, I guess I would be asking for a variance for that or non-conforming use because it's always been a contractor's yard, basically. And when we inherited the property, I came in there, and I'm sure you're all aware of what Isabella Street looked like before I cleaned it up. I went in, I got rid of all the weeds, the trees, all the iron that was in there to clean it up and be able to lease it out. I cleaned the whole property up, and I thought the township would be happy with that. And then I find out that I can't do what I wanted to do. And like I said, I'm new at this, so I don't really know how to appeal to you to except to tell you just what I'm telling you. It's always, I can't do anything with the property. If I want to sell it, it's not going to get the value of it because I don't have that variance, or I don't have that. And what I'm supposed to be able to have there is, now mind you, a restaurant, a barber shop, a hairstylist shop, an office, even a crematorium, or a nursery that sells plants. On one side of me, I have Madison Kelly, who is owned by Andrew Sabia, who has roofing materials there and other materials that they have stored outside. On the left side of me, Battaglia Auto Sales is there, and they have their tires are in the back of their building there. And up the hill, I have John Domino, who's Black Horse Garage, and I have Greg's Radiator. They're all using the properties that they were all, that we were using them for, but now I can't. And I just would prefer to have it. I would like you guys to grant me the variance or do with a non-conforming use, because it's always been that way.
Thank you, ma'am. Lonnie, do you have any comments?
I do not.
Thank you. Vernon, do you have anything? Okay, you're on mute, Vernon, just so you know.
Can I say, it's totally illogical to expect a restaurant in there or a tea room or because it's off the beaten path, and there's only a few other houses on that street, and everything else is industrial or commercial.
Thank you, Mrs. Ramsey. Do you have anything else to present?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Vernon, did you have anything, sir?
No, I don't.
Thank you, sir. Tom?
I have one question. And Dave, do you have what complaint that was actually filed against the property?
I believe a neighboring residence or neighboring property complained, I believe, about the use on the property.
Okay, and this complaint is recent. I mean, there's been no change to the property and what it's been used for in the past, correct?
Well, that was the first I heard of the property being used as a lumber yard when the complaint came in, and I believe
I think lumber yard is maybe, I guess that's the term you have to use for it. I think maybe it's cut wood from landscaping projects that they're storing there. And Mr. Ramsey, am I correct in that assumption?
He's strictly a tree care company. Right. And yes, it is. It's cut wood. It's right. Cut trees. but
It's
he
not a
is,
lumber-
he does,
It's not a lumber yard like we would go to if we went to Home Depot or
no,
Lowe's or something like that. Okay.
no, and he does take it. All those storms that we had, it wasn't like that until we had a whole bunch of storms and all the trees were falling all over, so he had to go do the cleanup.
Right.
So but he's in the process of moving a lot of that, when he has a truck, what do you call it? Big long truck, I forget what the heck it's called, that he takes to the mills
Right.
and, has that taken care of. That's,
I think the site is pretty much used. There's a similar site in the township on Gallagher Road by H&R Landscaping that they process cut wood. It's been a landscaping outfit for years, and I think it's pretty much the same situation as you have there. If that's in actuality what it is, I don't have any issues with that, Vince. I think maybe there may be personality problems or something going on along those lines, because I mean that this is not something that's drastically been changed within the last couple of weeks or since that project or since that complaint was filed. So I would have to say, given from what my knowledge is, I'd have to agree with Ms. Ramsey, and I don't think there's anything wrong there.
Tom,
Thank you, Tom.
just to clarify, Tom, that other site on Gallagher Road's a different zoning district where it would,
Oh, okay, all right, I'm sorry.
I think it's limited industrial or something over there.
All right, okay, but the area we're talking about is industrial.
It's industrial in nature, but it's zoned commercial.
Okay,
That's the issue. It's
so
not.
what is I mean, I'm not up on the the terms when commercial is compared to industrial. What are we talking about there? And can you relate to me what that would translate to as far as commercial? You talking more like properties for like storefronts?
Well, no, I mean, it goes back to section 1000 in our zoning ordinance compared to limited industrial, which is section 1400. You
Okay.
just compare the two uses there in those two sections, and you'll see where the permitted uses are. You know what I mean?
All right.
I
Which-
strictly being the zoning officer, I have to strictly go by
Oh,
what
no.
that zoning ordinance states.
I know. I understand.
well, can I speak? This
Go ahead,
has
Mrs.
always
Ramsey.
been, everybody else in that area, I understood that was grandfathered in. And so I would imagine my father was too. But since my father passed away, my mother passed away, my brother Jay and I took over the property. And I would think that it's still in the family. Why wouldn't we still be grandfathered like everybody else? And really, to me, it's illogical to say, well, you can put a nursery there and sell plants. It's not something where it's visible from from Ridge Pike. And it's, a restaurant in a commercial industrial area. That doesn't make sense to me either.
Yeah, well, it's for a lot of uses. I mean, other than what you're using it for. Like the code says, you're right. It's a hair salon, a lot of different things.
Right. Or even a crematorium.
Crematorium, yeah, that got me. Yeah.
Yeah.
Funeral home and crematorium.
Yeah. I'm just asking for the same that Domino and Greg's Radiator and Madison, Andrew Sabia, who owns that property, the same consideration that I can use the property the way that it was originally used anyway.
We understand, Mrs.
honestly-
Ramsey, and we're trying to work through the board to see if they have any questions so that we can move forward with this matter.
Okay, I'm sorry.
That's quite all right. No, thank you. Do you have anything else, Tom?
No, that's it for me, Vince.
Thank you, sir. Tony, do you have anything, sir?
Just a question. How many residences are on that street? Do you happen to know, Dave?
I think there's one or two other houses maybe on there.
Pure residential?
I believe so. Maybe across the street from Mrs. Ramsey's property. Yeah.
Okay. And is this a property, I mean, I'm slightly familiar with it, okay, but would any kind of vegetation or buffering assist in like maybe, you know, shielding any potential neighbors from what's going on there? I mean, because that's not a purely residential neighborhood. Obviously, it's kind of choppy back there. Okay. But I thought maybe if there was some, you know, arborvitae or trees, natural buffers, something like that could be put in place.
There are trees.
Have you considered that, Mrs. Ramsey?
There are trees that
Okay.
line the front of the property.
I see that on, you know, on the picture I have here. Okay. But I didn't know if there was, you know, is there any noise associated with what he does there?
No, not really. And he doesn't operate. It's not like he's there till 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock. He's usually in and out by 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock at the latest. And they're not, they never come down there before 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. Monica, do you have anything?
Yeah, a few questions. So does the contractor do any cutting work there, or is it all previously cut and then just dropped off there?
Well, it's all previously cut. Now he might cut something, you know, if it's too long, he might cut it to make it neater, but it's not like an ongoing thing where they cut every time they're there. They might, if they bring a long tree in there, they're going to cut it to make it a little bit shorter so that they can transport it. Or they can
And-
stack it.
Does he store anything else but trees there?
No, there's a dumpster that comes in there that he gets, you know, that he uses. No, he doesn't store. There might, once in a while, he might have a truck there, but nothing where there's no noise associated with all that. My daughter lives right there. And if there was noise, she has twin girls that are like 9 months old. She would most definitely tell me.
So are they dumping any soil or excavated materials?
No. It's strictly trees that they've cut down. Or trees that fell on a house from a storm, you know, and they might have to cut up the branches, and that's where they would throw them in the dumpster. They don't have anything other than that.
Okay, I don't have any more questions.
Thank you, Monica. Greg, do you have anything?
Just a quick question. So right now it's an open land and there's no plans for any type of storage or garage shelter or anything over the wood or anything?
I hadn't planned anything to put over the wood. I do have on this that I would like to be able to lease some of the property to other contractors for their equipment or landscapers. Back when I first cleaned up the property, there was a builder from the main line who wanted to lease my property so he could store his trucks there, you know, overnight, because he was doing work right in Plymouth Township. He went to Plymouth Township and they said, well, that's not the way it's going to work. You're going to have to put in a variance. It's $1,000. He said, well, what if it wasn't approved? They go, well, you don't get the money back. So he backed off. I've had a few people come to me and want to lease the property, but I haven't been able to because of this restriction.
But in its current state, it's just open land.
Yes.
Okay.
Open land. I have 2 driveways. The one driveway is used for the house. The other driveway was always used for contractors.
Yep.
And there are trees to buffer things and all along there, except
Okay.
where the 2 driveways are.
That's all, Vince.
Thank you, Greg. Michael, do you have anything?
No, I think she answered all the questions. There's no fence around the property as well. It's just an open field essentially. That's the side of an existing house, right?
Yes, there's the house, a driveway, then the land and another driveway. And there are trees in the front of the house and I'm sorry, not in front of the house, but where the one driveway ends, there's trees all along the front there. Pico just came and cut down a lot of the mantis trees or whatever, but I
Okay.
still have trees there, which I have to call Pico because they left a mess in the front. And then I have the driveway and some more trees.
So
and
is it all one plot, like all one with the house and the yard, or is it two separate properties?
It's all
just-
one property.
Oh, okay. And I guess my other question maybe would be directed to Dave. So she had mentioned being grandfathered in, I guess. Is there any record of any sort of, zoning relief previously?
No, and I mean, there might have been stuff back there years and years ago.
Okay.
But it's been a residential house for as long as I know. I don't know of any other businesses since I've been around the township that have been on that property. So
Right.
when a new business like this comes in, I just have to go by with what the zoning code says.
But the entire plot is zoned the same. It's not
Correct.
differently zoned for the house versus the,
Correct.
okay. Okay, that's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Michael. Dave, do you have anything to add at this time?
Not right now. Thanks.
Thank you.
May I say one more thing?
Yes, ma'am.
It always has, there have been over the years, other contractors that came in that there was Herb Fry, he did paving. There was a landscaper that used to live up on Volk Road, I believe. Several different contractors, different companies came in there and rented the property from my dad. So, and the only time that there hasn't been someone there is when I took over the property and cleaned it up. I took the property over and I got rid of so much iron, paver boxes, dump trucks, tractor trailer bodies, all the brush, got all that cleaned up. That cost me $15,000. That's how much steel and iron was there. And I had an $7,000 credit. So I ended up paying $8,000, but I got rid of all the tires. I got rid of anything that was harmful or it was disgusting. So I got rid of it. I cleaned it up with the intent of being able to keep it nice and rent it out so that I could recoup some of the money that, I've done everything to make the place look good. I even put a new porch roof on and I had that approved. I forget who it was, Jack Fessler, maybe. I don't know. I had my husband and my son-in-law do that. And it was all approved and all that. But I mean, I just did everything to make that property look good.
And I just want to make clear, we're just voting on the use for this tree cutting service. So if by chance, Mrs. Ramsey, this tree cutting service in a year or two leaves and a new contractor comes in, they still have to abide by what it states in section 1000 of the zoning ordinance. I just want you to be aware of that. Just because you might be approved by the zoning hearing board this month for this, it's just for this specific use. I just want to just in an abundance of caution, want to make you aware of that.
So if I wanted to lease to another contractor also, like a landscaper, I would have to do what? To go for another
It depends
variance?
what type of use that contractor does. So that section of the zoning ordinance, section 1000, those are all the permitted uses in that zoning district. So if a contractor meets those provisions, by all means, they can use the property for that.
Yeah, I don't have the thing in front of me to look to see what 1000 says.
I just want to make you aware, that's all.
Okay,
Thank you, Dave.
Yep.
thanks.
Is there anyone in the audience opposed to the application? Is there anyone in the audience in favor of the application? Hearing none, do we have a motion?
Tom, you're on mute.
You're on mute.
I'd like to make go ahead and approve this.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Thank you very much, Mrs. Ramsey. We wish you a lot of luck.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it, guys. Okay, I can go?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Okay, have a good evening.
You too now.
Me too.
Yeah, the same.
Who made that motion and who seconded again?
Tom made the motion and Greg second.
Gotcha, thank you.
Certainly. Would you introduce the next case, Dave?
Yes, I'm sorry. Just
No
making-
worries. Take your time, sir. Not trying to rush.
The second case on the agenda tonight is the Pennsylvania Real Estate Investment Trust on an application for a special exception from Plymouth Township zoning ordinance number 342 as amended, Article 11, Section 1100.R. The special exception requested as follows to allow a 503-unit apartment development. The property is located at Germantown Pike and Hickory Road, parcel ID 49-00-04-120-80-8 in a shopping center zoning district. And whoever wants to present, you're on board. Go right ahead.
Muted. David, I'm here. I have Seth Shapiro from Barton Partners. I have Joe DeSantis from McMahon. And I have Dan Herman, Senior Vice President of Development for Pennsylvania Real Estate Investment Trust. So, okay, there's Joe. So Seth has a PowerPoint. Can you give him screen share control?
We're good.
Yep. Okay, great, thank you.
Yep, you have it. I just shared it. It didn't look like I actually needed even permission. I just went ahead and did it.
We're good.
You got it? Good.
Okay, so take that down for a minute, Seth, and let me make my opening and then, or do you want to put up the plan that we filed? Is there a chance you can blow that up a little bit?
Hold on.
Maybe you're at its maximum with the screen.
Yeah, I think I'm at the maximum with the screen.
Okay. So thank you for hearing our presentation tonight. My name is Mark Kaplan, and I represent PREIT, Pennsylvania Real Estate Investment Trust, which is the owner of what we all call the Plymouth Meeting Mall, located at Germantown Pike and Hickory Road. And I know everybody knows where it is, but Seth, take your pointer and show us where the entrance is at Germantown, right opposite, I guess that's Arthur's Court. I don't think we have to spend much time on that. We all know where it is. So there is a part of the mall property down at what I'll call the bottom near the Pennsylvania Turnpike. And that's the site. Seth, why don't you put the blow up? So the existing improvements on this property is a two-story, 60,000 square foot office building that some of us may remember when IKEA was there, and this was IKEA's office. It's laid fallow for as long as I can remember. And PREIT proposes to develop this property with an 11-story high-rise apartment building consisting of 503 dwelling units. We believe that this use of the property is permitted under section 1100 of the zoning ordinance, and that in order to avail ourselves of that provision of the zoning ordinance, we have to apply for a special exception and receive a special exception from the zoning hearing board. Now, the overall property is about 68.5 acres on which the mall is located. The property that we're talking about developing is a 7-acre parcel abutting the east side of the mall. And under the township's zoning ordinance, CREAT is permitted to combine multiple parcels into one tract for purposes of development. Now, Seth has put on the board, on the screen, I should say, the use regulations of the shopping center district. And we've excerpted 3 different provisions. And I think it's very important that the planning agency understands the legal basis of our presentation. The ordinance provides that a building or combination of buildings may be erected, altered, or used, and a lot may be used or occupied for any of the following uses. It can be used as a motel or a motor court. It can be used as an elderly housing assisted living facility when authorized as a conditional use. So we believe that, well, let me get to section R, which is the most important part of it. In addition to a number of specifically enumerated uses that are permitted, section R allows any use, and these are the key words, any use of the same general character as any of the above permitted uses when authorized as a special exception. And based upon the ordinance and a long series of Pennsylvania Commonwealth and Supreme Court decisions, we believe that an apartment building is a, quote, use of the same general character as a motel or a motor court. We also believe that an apartment building is a use of the same general character as an elderly housing or assisted living facility. And it will be our job next week to go to the zoning hearing board and demonstrate from a legal point of view that this provision, 1100R, gives CREAT the right to build and use an apartment building on this property. Now, just to give you a little bit more background, there are 2 definitions in section 200 of the ordinance that we believe help us to demonstrate that our use, an apartment building, is a similar, a generally similar, I apologize, a use of the same general character as an elderly housing assisted living facility or a motel. And why do I say that? Well, let's look at the definition of elderly housing. It starts off by saying a multi-family structure. It's exactly what an apartment building is. That shall include without limitation, and then it sets forth the normal things that we would see in an elder housing facility that we're seeing develop all around us, particularly to the east in White Marsh on Ridge Pike. So it could, an elderly housing assisted living facility would have common dining and social and recreation features, special safety and convenience features designed for the needs of the elderly, et cetera, and would provide for meals. Now, that's not exactly what an apartment building is, but the ordinance doesn't say that the use that we're proposing has to be the same as a permitted use. It says it has to be a use of the same general character. And the courts have interpreted that very broadly. Let me go on. A use that's been in the ordinance for as long as I can remember is a motel or a motor court. And that's a building or a group of two or more detached or semi-detached buildings containing rooms or, and here's the magic words, or apartments having separate ground floor entrances provided directly or closely in connection with automobile parking or storage space serving such rooms or apartments, and which buildings are intended to be used principally for providing sleeping accommodations for automobile travelers and is suitable for occupancy for all seasons of the year. Well, that says a motel or a motor court is an apartment having a separate ground floor entrance, having automobile parking spaces and storage, and is designed for people to sleep in it at all times of the year. Our apartment building is not limited to automobile travelers, but that's not the requirement. The requirement is not that our apartment building has to be identical. It only has to be a use of the same general character. So I bring those legal arguments to you, the planning agency, because I would assume that the first thing that you thought about when we made this application is, well, there's nothing in section 1100 that says apartment building. And I agree with that. So we don't have to argue about that. But it does have this provision saying a use of the same general character as an elderly housing assisted living facility or a motel or a motor court. And Seth, go to the next provision that you and I talked about that's in the ordinance. There's a number of criteria in the ordinance. Pardon me?
That's the one we put at the end?
Yeah, would you please? I think it'll help. So for whatever reason, in the development requirements for the shopping center district, it contains regulations for the amount of parking spaces for a high-rise apartment. So 1101F sub 4 says High-rise apartment buildings or hotels require two parking spaces for each 1 or 2 bedroom apartment. Somebody will have to tell me why in the development regulations, there's a requirement for parking for high-rise apartment buildings if the ordinance did not intend for apartment buildings to be a use permitted by special exception. And again, in the similar vein, in the maximum height section of the zoning ordinance in 1101L, it talks about the maximum height of a high-rise apartment building, a hotel, a motel, etc., is 140 feet. Same comment with regard to that provision. They all seem to say that an apartment building is the same as the other uses that are permitted in the shopping center district. And if, oh, by the way, you decide to build a high-rise apartment, you better have 2 parking spaces and you can't exceed 140 feet. So that's the basis of our application to the zoning hearing board. And we'll make those arguments before the zoning hearing board next week. But I think it's important that you understand where we're coming from. So Seth, we've shown a overall site plan that shows where the building would go, and we've shown the blow up of that. I think we should show the planning agency a rendering, one of your renderings of the proposed building. And Seth will come back in a little while to testify some more, but Seth created the renderings that we're going to show and was instrumental in citing the apartment building. And this is the apartment building that we proposed. And we wanted you to see it in relationship to the office building over there on the left, the Whole Foods in the middle, and then the apartment building. Now, I'm going to go away from the planning aspects of this for a couple of minutes, and I'm going to ask Dan Herman, Preet's Senior Vice President in charge of development, to give us a little history about the Plymouth Meeting Mall, the situation involving the mall, the present economic situation with malls. And in order to help Dan with that, Seth has prepared a colored drawing of the overall mall property. Seth, is it possible to blow that up a little bit?
I think I can do that. Hold on, let me.
Yeah, that's it. Move it a little bit over. That's good.
Good. Okay.
Dan, Dave, can you authorize Dan Herman to be able to speak?
I may
Yeah,
be.
I believe, yeah, that's fine.
Can everybody hear me okay?
I think you ought to come a little bit closer.
Sure, certainly. Happy to do that. Thank you, Mark, and thank you to the planning agency to permit us to present and provide you some information tonight. So let me take you on a journey. It's the journey of the regional mall business that started back in the 50s and 60s and into the mainly into the 70s, and then it started slowing down after that period of time with development. And at the time, you had regional department stores. Philadelphia was no different than a lot of other major cities in the country, where you had multiple family-run department stores, many of which didn't care for each other and wanted to reclude each other from being in a property in which they were at, so as to provide them much more percentage of the market share. And Plymouth Meeting Mall happens to be one of those that became a victim of the overbuilding in a regional market. And when I say overbuilding, because if you have an opportunity today to look in the rearview mirror, you would say, I have Willow Grove Park Mall that has Bloomingdale's, Macy's, JCPenney was there. It's now Nordstrom Rack, Cheesecake Factory, and some others. You had a Sears, which is now Primark, and some other tenants within that. And further to the west, you jump past Plymouth Meeting and you have King of Prussia, the Behemoth Mall. And so from a consumer standpoint, we sit squarely in the middle, bifurcating two regional markets and not being strong enough to stand on its own. And over time, what's proven out is that those department stores that didn't want to be with each other start showing their true colors with what's left in the marketplace. And so over the years since we've owned Plymouth Meeting Mall, Boscov's has continued to do very well. And we've seen other deterioration of the department stores, as well as inline shops, both in terms of the growth and then the attrition of the number of retailers, but also their understanding of the market and not needing to have as many stores in the market to generate the same sales, because we as consumers are willing to travel to other locations, even if this was the most convenient. And so you have the department store that was torn down to make way for the Whole Foods. That entire wing was torn down and rebuilt. And at the same time, we added other restaurants around the periphery of the property. And as you recall, over time, we've continued to reinvest in the property, trying to make the mall better, reinvesting our private capital into it to make it the best shopping experience possible. And at the time, Macy's was still alive and well. And Macy's became about as a result of them acquiring Strawbridge and Clothier, right? And so you think about the local department stores, how they eventually left the landscape as they were acquired and merged into other department store chains. And as those chains started looking at the landscape, realizing they didn't need all of those stores, as their leases ran out, they chose not to renew the leases. And that's why we wound up with the Macy's here at this particular situation. And we've believed that in redeveloping and re-tenanting the mall, bringing in Dick's Sporting Goods, Michael's, Edge Fitness, Miller's Ale House, Burlington stores, et cetera, would be an additional shot in the arm, just like we thought the Whole Foods wing would be a shot in the arm to help revitalize the mall. And throughout the entire time, we firmly believe in the real estate. We find ourselves staring, though, at a physical plant that is somewhat obsolete, and that it's not a matter of finding how much more you can do at the inside. I think it's now more about how do you continue making the regional play here relevant to the residents of Plymouth Meeting Township? How do you make it relevant to the retailers that are doing well here? And how do you take it to the next level? And so as we look at this opportunity here, and we've seen it across the country happening with other developers and other regional malls, where a very similar fact pattern plays out, that you would not, since you wouldn't build a mall here, what would you do with the real estate? We believe a continuation of this is adding multifamily to it. And the multifamily adds a number of dimensions to it that don't exist today. One, it creates a new product within the township and providing an opportunity for people to live in an alternate form of residential housing. Two, it adds a group of customers to all of our restaurants and the Whole Foods and to Boscov's and to the theater and to Dave & Buster's and all the other things we have here at the mall. And equally important to understand is as we do it, and Seth will get into this very shortly, is to explain how in every step of the way that we've undertaken redevelopment at the property, we've been concerned about the pedestrian activity on the property, pedestrian connectivity, and not as concerned about or helping advocate people getting in their car and driving. And as we look at adding multifamily to this, in conjunction with all of the other redevelopment activity that's taken place, we're doing it with the, how do you make it part of its own neighborhood? That once you're on the property, you park your car and you can traverse the property, live, work, play there. And so understanding a little bit of the background of the mall business, we find ourselves in an interesting situation as to how to continue moving forward with real opportunities and not just believing that, well, someday we're going to find somebody else who might want to occupy, another retailer who would want to occupy the inside of the mall. We don't have a firm plan today with all of the inside of the mall. We are working on those plans right now and have some ideas that we're kicking around and testing the markets. And I'm sure at the appropriate time, we'll be back in front of this group again to talk about what that plan would be. But for today, we're here talking about adding multifamily as part of the overall redevelopment and continued redevelopment of the property. Seth?
Thank you, Dan. Seth, I'd like you to pick up from where Dan left off, whether you want to use this plan to show connectivity or the more specialized plan that you have. I leave that up to you, but I'm not going to ask you a lot of questions. You and I have talked about the pros and the cons, and I'd like you to do as Dan just did and tell the planning agency your perspective from a planning point of view. And I guess maybe you should do one thing first and explain your background and who you are and what you do.
Sure. Hi, good evening, everybody. Everybody hear me well?
Yes.
Yes.
Fantastic. All right, so my name is Seth Shapiro. I'm a principal and director of planning and urban design for a firm called Barton Partners. We're actually located just down the street in Norristown. The firm's been around for 30 years and we've done work in Plymouth Township and all around the region, and in fact, pretty much all over the country. My own background, I actually am local. I actually grew up in King of Prussia. I am trained professionally as an architect. I have a bachelor's of architecture. I also am trained as a planner, urban designer. I have a graduate degree called a Master of Architecture in Urban Design, which I received in 2000. Since that time, I've been operating in the space between planning and architecture, working almost entirely on setting conceptual design, working within regulatory frameworks in the land planning front, and gaining entitlements. It can be a lot of fun because I get to sort of start the very initial concepts and see them come out of the ground, which can sometimes take time, but it could also be frustrating because it can take so much time, and also because land use regulations very rarely keep up with market forces and also the desires of the general public in terms of what is current and how people live. In this case, and we're seeing this all over the country, we are seeing underused properties that have already been developed being proposed as redevelopments, specifically as multifamily. And a lot of you are probably wondering about this. There's been a ton of multifamily built. That is true. And the reason for that is because I'd say up until about 10 years ago, there were a good 30 years where there was no multifamily built. And because of demographic changes, the changes in how people like to live, there is a very, very deep market in terms of multifamily, and specifically the kind of building that I'm going to take you through today. It's a very interesting site. I'm actually going to go to the next slide here. Actually, let me go to the slideshow, shall we? Okay. So this is sort of zooming in to the parcel and to the building shape as we show it. And one of the things that I've been doing with a lot of our clients who are looking to do multifamily buildings is explaining to them that you can't just drop a building into a parking lot. As shopping malls, as we all know, are surrounded by parking lots. You can't just drop a building into a parking lot and assume that you've created a place. It has to have connectivity. It has to have an address of its own. It has to have people have to have a reason to want to live there. And this site's actually really interesting from that front. One, because it's actually kind of a regional landmark, right? It's at the corner of Main and Main, if you think about it. 276, 476, that huge interchange that you can probably see from space. Very, very prominent location. And there's already some height on this parcel that the office building, I mean, I can remember that office building as a child, seeing that office building coming back down the Pennsylvania Turnpike, coming back from visiting my grandparents. It does serve as that sort of landmark location. But even then, this particular location on the site, there's a ton of opportunity for pedestrian connectivity. No one's going to make the argument that a shopping mall is a pedestrian Shangri-La. But as Dan mentioned, if we can create these properties where you park once and walk places, that's a huge improvement. And in this case, we have a multifamily building situated right across the street from what I would at least consider the best amenity that you can possibly provide a multifamily building. And that is a grocery store, a Whole Foods Market. And so that Whole Foods Market sits right here. We have our front door of our building right here, and a crosswalk right to the existing stairway that exists here into the Whole Foods Market. And of course, you know that there's underground parking here for the Whole Foods. But we don't think we stop there either. We actually have an office building right here. And I could certainly see someone living in this community, living in this building, doing their food shopping at Whole Foods, or most likely getting their takeout at Whole Foods, maybe working in this building. They may not get in their car for a week. And that to me means that this is actually a really, really interesting site from a multifamily perspective. Now I'm gonna actually take a few minutes to just take you through how this building works. It's kind of unique. So it has 2 levels of below grade parking. As you know, the site starts to drop off. And so we've taken advantage of that grade and dropped 2 levels of below grade parking. The first level that actually is on the ground is what's shown here, and that's at grade up here, which is actually almost a full story above the levels here. So while we say 2 levels below grade, one of those levels may be sticking up a little bit, but another is fully below grade. At the ground floor, we'd have a very generous drop-off and pickup location. That's the other thing that we are seeing. We are now doing multifamily apartment buildings and complexes and communities where parking ratios are greatly reduced. The advent of Uber and Lyft are huge, and also deliveries for other kinds of items. So we'd like to have sort of formal drop-off and pickups. The purple area here is the front lobby and leasing. We like to hide our mechanical areas. And then the yellow area depicts actual residential units. So we would actually have some residential units on that ground floor. So this is level 1. 2 and 3, we still have more of that parking, but we also have the residential building starting to rise. This is level 4. So this would be the top of the parking deck. And remember, the parking deck was shaped here. And on that top of that parking deck, we have a very generous amenity deck. I actually can't read, it's something like 30,000 square feet of space. I mean, it's a huge amenity deck. And there would probably be an outdoor pool, lots of other things, as well as 13,000 feet of indoor space. So these buildings are very highly amenitized. And then of course, you have the shape of the building going into all 4 corners here. With that, we go up to levels 5 through 11. The building itself, I think, caps out at about 119 feet. Incidentally, I think the height limitation for this particular site, even though residential high-rise is permitted to go to 140, I believe the governing height limit on this site is 120. We kept it to that. In total, there are 503 residential units in this building. That's approximately half 1-bedroom, half 2-bedroom. It's very likely that there'll be some studios mixed into that and some 2-bedroom dens mixed into that as well. And we went ahead and parked it at your code requirement of 2 spaces per unit, although I would point out that's well beyond what the market demands these days. So with that, we go back to the overall site plan. And before I turn it over to Joe DeSantis, a lot of people ask, well, aren't you, you're going to be adding a lot of traffic. There's only the main entrance to the mall. it's really not the case. Like, one of the things that we noticed about the site is that there are multiple points of entrance to the site. Not only do you have this main entrance here, and of course that right in off of Germantown here, but we also are providing this access road that's all the way to Old Hickory. So this building almost sits at sort of this junction of a very sort of traditional conventional ring road. With that, I will shut up. And I think should we turn it over to Joe?
Well, I'm, you know what? Seth, you threw an enormous amount of information. Do me a favor, take down the screen share for a minute, and let's take a little break, and let's ask the board if, before we get into the access and the traffic and the circulation improvements, what are we doing? What do you got? You still got the screen share?
I was just going to pull up an aerial for a background.
Well, I'd rather we have everybody's picture, so why don't you do that?
That better?
No, I had got your desktop.
Right. Do you want me just to stop sharing altogether?
Yeah, stop share for a minute. We'll give you a share back. So, Mr. Chairman, I know we just threw a whole lot of information at you and the board. Would it be appropriate for us to stop here before we get to the traffic and the circulation, and to allow Dan and Seth and maybe me to answer any questions? Or would you like us to proceed with the circulation and the traffic presentation?
Mr. Kaplan, I believe it's important for the board to understand everything in its entirety so that they can ask appropriate questions at the appropriate time. So if you could continue with the presentation, and then we can ask questions regarding how things work in totality towards the end. I think that would be the most efficient use of our time, because we want to be mindful. You know, everybody does have day jobs. And
Yep.
we certainly do want to wind down somewhere between 9 and 9:30 at the latest.
Okay, that's fine with me. Seth,
I'm back.
so unwind what I said and give us Joe's drawings.
Okay, 1 second. There we go.
So my friend Joe DeSantis is a traffic engineer for a long, long time. He's the president of McMahon Associates, and he's been involved in this mall in many different iterations of its improvements. So as we have been talking to council members and Lonnie and Dave and Karen, one of the things that has been said to us a number of times is, what are you guys going to do about the circulation at this mall? So we commissioned Joe to look at, we commissioned Joe to do two things. He has done a traditional traffic study to show the zoning hearing board how much traffic will be created by the apartments and what the effect will be. And we'll have him touch on that at the end of his presentation. But more importantly, we asked him to critically analyze the circulation at the property. And we gave them an advantage finally, because we said, you're not going to have that dead end down there at the bottom of the road where the IKEA building is. We're going to propose a building there with parking and circulation and access and all that. So Joe, before I get carried away and talk about all of your proposed traffic improvements, you and Seth walk us through each of the improvements. And what is in front of the board is an overall plan. But we asked Joe and Seth to break out each piece of the improvements that Joe's talking about so that we can all focus on this. And I think that everybody in this room, I live around the corner and I work in Bluebell. We understand the circulation of the mall. And I think it will be great if Joe explains to us what his analysis has said with regard to each of the issues or problems and how he proposes to remedy the situation. So Joe, I'll try and be quiet and let you make your presentation.
Thanks, Mark. Good evening, everyone. My name is Joe DeSantis. I'm president of McMahon Associates. McMahon Associates is a traffic and transportation engineering company that's based in Fort Washington. But we have offices in Mid-Atlantic region. We're up in New England. We're down in Florida. And our specialty is traffic and particularly traffic impact studies for developments and things like that. And I've been involved in analysis of developments, retail developments and housing developments and office and all sorts of developments for 30 years now. So McMahon has been involved with the Plymouth Meeting Mall going back to 2007. And I actually myself have been involved with PREET since then. And the one thing I want to start with, just so the planning members know this, you may know this, but I think it's important to realize, back in 2007, when we were first involved with PREET, the question was asked, how do you improve traffic in and out of the mall, Plymouth Meeting Mall? And at the time, Germantown Pike was 2 lanes each direction. And our response was, Germantown Pike needs to be 3 lanes in each direction between Plymouth Road and Hickory Road. So PREET did that. So I want to make sure everybody understands, PREET paid for the widening of Germantown Pike between Plymouth Road and Hickory Road from 4 lanes, actually 5 lanes, to 7 lanes, the 3 lanes each way with the left turn lane. There was several $1 million that they spent to widen that road. And it's made a significant difference for regional traffic getting through there to get to the turnpike. So PREET paid for that. And I also want to tell the board, so they understand, that in 2007, PREET was mostly retail. And the whole reason we were involved was they were going to start changing the mix, and they added the restaurants. And that's where we studied the new restaurants and some additional retail. This was prior to the Whole Foods. And when they made the changes, we went back and studied it. And actually the peak hour traffic for the mall has gone down and has continually gone down because of the different uses that they've put into it. Adding, things like the Legoland and the restaurants, they all have different peak characteristics, such that the morning and afternoon peak hours, the volumes in and out of the mall are actually less than they were in 2007. And at the same time, PREET widened Germantown Pike to add capacity. So I want everyone to remember that. If you did know it, great. If you didn't know it, keep that in mind with what PREET's trying to do here. They're trying to revamp the mall, make it more revitalize it, and adding another use where you can intermingle the activities between the residents and the retail, actually contains the traffic and actually reduces the peak flow compared to if it was a standalone use. So with that all said, when we did meet with the staff several times talking about adding an apartment here, the question of circulation within the mall kept coming up. So we took a look at what are the issues within the mall, and there's about 6 areas that we identified. The first one is the main access. And Seth, if you can bring that up. So what happens with the main access on Germantown Pike is that internal intersection is so close to the traffic signal. There's a lot of conflicting movements there that impede the flow of traffic internally to get to the traffic light. And while our analysis shows there's plenty of capacity with the green light, it's not being fully utilized because the traffic is impeded by the internal intersection. And a lot of it has to do with the left turns coming in, with the traffic coming into the internal intersection and turning left, holding up everybody who's trying to get to the traffic signal. So our recommendation.
Wait, let's slow that up. Seth, take that pointer and you and Joe try and illustrate what Joe just said so that people understand it. It took me a while to understand why there was the holdup there.
Right. So where Seth is, his arrow is showing you there's two lanes coming in. He's showing you where we're going to put a wider median to cover the left lane, so you can't turn left any longer when you come in. You will be forced to turn right. And that yellow area is widened pavement area to force everyone coming in this driveway to turn right. And the reason we could do this is there's a driveway just to the west that anyone who really wants to come in and turn left could just continue straight on Germantown Pike and turn in to the next driveway up the road. They don't have to come in this driveway and turn left, and they simply hold up traffic for no reason.
Joe, let's make sure they understand that.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is the left turn into the main access,
Well,
which causes a problem. While we want to get rid of it, there's an alternative. It is that access up the road near the office building that's never used and would take that traffic, whether it's coming from the east or making a left turn onto Germantown Pike, can go up and get in around to where the restaurants are without causing further confusion in the interior.
Right, and it's
Okay.
It's westbound Germantown Pike traffic primarily is what I'm talking about. If you're coming eastbound on Germantown Pike, you can turn left at Hickory Road to get into the. You don't have to come down to this light. And our studies show that most of the traffic that turns left from eastbound Germantown Pike comes in and turns right anyway. So they're already doing that. This is to prevent people going westbound on Germantown Pike from coming in and turning in this driveway, forcing them to go to the next driveway. And what that does is eliminates a conflict that is causing the problems. And once you eliminate this conflict, our analysis shows the internal intersection goes from an F to a C, meaning the delay goes from high delay to very little delay for the traffic that's on the ring road that's trying to get to the throat to go out to the traffic light. So it's going to work much more efficiently this way. So that's the first area we recommended.
Well, wait, Joe, there's one more aspect of that. If you're over there at the restaurants and you're going to live in the apartments, you're going to want to come down that front ring road and go through that intersection. And my understanding is you've essentially created a bypass so that can happen without causing confusion or conflict in the intersection.
Yeah, we're going to continue to allow the through movement along the ring road. So they can go through there. It's a stop control. They have to yield to the people in the other direction that they're turning left. So the bulk of the traffic that uses that driveway is coming from the left side, and they will have the main flow, and they don't have to they don't have to conflict with traffic coming in. There's no more of that conflict with traffic coming in. So they have the right of way. So it maintains circulation around the mall, but it eliminates one of the conflicts, the conflict that's inhibiting traffic. So then as we go around to the next improvement, it's the curve to the south of the, or I'm sorry, to the east of the main access. And what's happening there is there's definitely a conflict between traffic that comes in from the right, the right lane, the right in, Seth, yeah, that right lane coming in.
Where the gas station
Where the gas
is.
station is, conflicting with people coming around the curve and almost, running into each other when they crisscross as they come in that entranceway. So what we're trying to do is create a little bit more separation as they come around the curve, introduce some flexible posts that kind of keep the traffic separate until they're more straight, and then they can do their weaving once they've straightened out, as opposed to cutting in front of each other, which happens a lot. So that's our second recommendation for circulation. The third one is, Seth, go to the next intersection. It's the T intersection in front of the, where the Whole Foods and the Michael's parking fields kind of comes together and tees into the ring road. What happens there is you have a 3-lane section on one side and a 2-lane section on the other, and you have basically traffic sort of heading head first into each other, particularly coming out. You line up with traffic in the left lane. What we want to do is actually create a better alignment through there so that each lane has its own area to travel into, and the left turning vehicles coming in that are going to turn left to go towards the Dick's Sporting Goods and all that would line up with a shadowed area on the other side, as opposed to today they line up with the through traffic coming across. So we think that'll reduce some of the confusion at that intersection as to who really has the right of way, and rather than waiting for people who are right in front of you, kind of aimed right towards you. So that's an area that we think would improve the circulation. Then the next area is, I think Mark mentioned it, today the ring road kind of leads you straight through to where the old IKEA building was. And what we want to do is better delineate that traffic should curve around that area. So we've introduced what we're recommending is a grass area with curving, and curve everybody so that they are pointed in between where the parking garage for the Whole Foods is and the new apartment building. And then if they want to go into the apartment building, they turn right, or they continue to go straight, and they could turn left into the garage for the Whole Foods. So again, I think that'll clean up some confusion at the way the intersection is currently configured, to align everyone more appropriately. And then the other improvement on this ring road is the intersection. As you come up to the T intersection, we really want to encourage traffic, particularly traffic that wants to leave after they've left the garage from Whole Foods and they want to leave the mall, guide them to turn right and go around the back of the movie theater and follow the route that Seth laid out to get to the access on Hickory Road, particularly the traffic light at Hickory Road, so that they can disperse. There's a lot of capacity at both actually all 3 driveways on Hickory Road have good capacity. So we really want traffic to kind of focus more towards that road around the back of the movie theater. And to do that, we want to increase the radius and really encourage them to turn right rather than turn left. And the only other thing I want to note before we,
Joe, before you go there, let me interrupt you for a minute. So my office is in Bluebell, off of Walton Road. And my house is down the road, down Germantown Pike, where the Brittingham's is. And I go that way twice a day, if not more. And the single most important thing for me is to avoid the intersection at Germantown Pike and Butler Pike. So I do all kinds of things to avoid it. I go over Joshua Road and over Flowertown Road and over Narcissa Road. And coming home, I'll do the reverse. But my wife and I are empty nesters, and there are plenty of times on the way home when I'll stop and go to Whole Foods. And when I do that, I take that road back out. Seth, put that drawing up that you show the exit to up to Narcissa Road. So I come out of Whole Foods and go the opposite way and go out and go down Hickory Road, go onto Narcissa Road, go down and make a left on Flowertown Road. Anything to avoid the intersection of Germantown Pike and Butler Pike. And I've represented Preet, and I've represented Toll Brothers, and I've represented Brandywine and Danella, and we've all tried to figure out a way to fix that intersection. And with two historic buildings on one side and the historic wall on the other, I don't think it's ever going to happen. So I believe that, and the reason that we show this is that this is a very attractive location as Seth laid out. And I believe, maybe this is just my personal opinion, that the Hickory Road entrance access is valuable to get us all around Germantown Pike and Bethlehem Pike. I'm sorry, and Butler Pike. So Joe, I'm sorry, I interrupted you. Go to the last item that you wanted to go to.
yeah, I just wanted to, well, back up just one. I wanted to back up one, Seth. Yeah, that one. Just wanted to highlight the at the lower part of the box there. There's a highlighted area. That's a second access to the garage for the apartment building. So again, that was one thing that we recommended be added to the project, which they have, which connects you right to that ring road. So I just wanted to, again, just highlight that. So I think a lot of residents are going to recognize that that's a better way to get in and out rather than fighting the retail traffic in the front. But anyway, just to piggyback on what Mark said. So the next slide is really something that we noticed when we were out there observing all the traffic is this driveway actually on Hickory Road has a lot of capacity, but tends to get bogged down because it has a lot of bus traffic. And what happens is the buses are trying to come out of there and turn left. And they have a lot of buses. Anytime you have a bus that's trying to turn left and traffic coming down Fountain Road comes out on the same green light, it tends to hold up the buses, holds up everybody because everybody, a lot of the buses want to turn left. And by the time that the one bus gets out, the light turns red and the driveway remains, cluttered, and the backup tends to start affecting the ring road. So what we're recommending is install a advanced left turn arrow for the driveway to get the traffic moving off the access right away and hold up Fountain Road for a little bit and get the traffic moving off of the access. And we think that'll help clear up that access much better. And again, when it spills back onto the ring road, it affects the circulation on the ring road. So if we can get that throw to that access cleared, which we believe adding a left turn arrow will do that. That should improve the circulation, the traffic flow along the circulation aisle. So those are improvements. I think there's 6 of them, and we're recommending them to Preet.
So, I think there's one more thing that, you got it. Seth, we've only shown one of your 3 perspectives. And I'd like you to, now that we've shown all of that, if you could show what's going to be done with the building and show where the amenity space is and describe your building, please.
Sure. So this is the view I think that we've already shown, just to show its relationship to the Whole Foods and to the office building here. You can see there's sort of the taller ground floor here where there's some residential, but there's also the lobby space here. But then there's all the residential units that are stacked. We've given every residential unit an outdoor balcony space. We actually think that the views from once you get about 4 or 5 stories up, you actually see the skyline of Philadelphia. So it's actually got some pretty incredible views. This is just a little bit closer. You can see sort of the richness of the building and the texture. We have some precast, we have some brick, some glass. Real conceptual at this point. As the thing develops, we'll get into a lot of detail, and also we're really big on getting sort of feedback and doing precedent analyses with various boards. But again, you can see sort of its relationship to the Whole Foods here, and that road that Joe mentioned that we're going to now curve this way as opposed to coming straight in this way. And then lastly, just for sort of that landmark that I mentioned before, how this thing sits at that corner of Main and Main. Here's how the building sits in its relationship to the Turnpike. It actually is pretty far back from the Turnpike. There's a fantastic planted wooded area there. This is that amenity deck that I mentioned. And these apartments here would have these sort of incredible views. So we think this would really be a signature project for the region.
So Seth, blow that up a little bit more, because while we're talking about height, I'd like it to, there are 3 or 4 buildings when I looked at this that are either as high or higher. So first of all, you've got the office building that looks like it's 3 or 4 stories higher. Behind it, that red brick building behind it, I believe is the building at Fountain. Fountain is that road that goes through the corporate center up at Walton Road that is tenanted. It's a Brandywine building that's tenanted by some type of pharmaceutical company. And yeah, that's it. You got it right there. And then over to the left, you've got the condos on the westbound side of Germantown Pike that are also quite high. And finally, if you go a little bit over off the yeah, you got it.
Yeah.
Place 1 at the top of the hill. So, and you are absolutely right. That location is way up and the views are fantastic. But I'm prejudiced because I've lived here for 40 years. So Dan, Joe, Seth, anything else we want to say?
Nope, I think that's it.
So, Mr. Chairman, thank you for everybody paying attention to us. We would be pleased to entertain anybody's questions. Please feel free to address it to the person that you think would be the right one to answer it.
Thank you, Mr. Kaplan. If we could stop the screen share so that we could get the view of everyone on screen, please. And if needed, we may go back to that. I'd like to start with Lonnie. Lonnie, do you have any comments at this time?
Well, I guess my only comment is that we're at a zoning issue presentation. to the planning agency, and we've had various meetings with the applicant, and there are some engineering issues that are outstanding on this project. Most formidably, the handling of the sanitary sewer associated with any expansion at the mall. So, I don't know how that plays into whether or not you consider this application tonight favorably or unfavorably, but the planning agency should know that there is some outstanding engineering issues that have not been resolved.
I appreciate that, Lonnie.
May I address that?
Yes, Mr. Kaplan.
Yeah, Lonnie, I did not bring Bob Campbell here tonight. Well, I'm not sure, do I? I might have Bob in the audience. But Pannoni has analyzed the sewer situation to which you refer. The sewer goes out into Allen's Court. There's a number of manholes there. It works its way back to the Metroplex. And we have a detailed engineering study that shows that there's plenty of capacity until you get back to a location near the Metroplex. And we have a fix for that. Since we would be paying an impact fee for capacity, we would be willing to substitute paying that impact fee and using it to provide the capacity that the township has told us that it doesn't have. Lonnie, we would be pleased to share both Bowler's investigation of the sewer lines and Pannoni's analysis and potential fix. But I suggest to you that we are at the special exception stage, and the courts have said repeatedly that special exception or conditional use, the only issue is use. Land development will take care of traffic, engineering, stormwater, and all of those things. And I know you agree with that that's the more appropriate time. But you're right. It would be foolhardy for us to spend all of this money and time and then find out, whoops, there's no capacity. Well, we know there's treatment capacity. We know there's conveyance capacity coming out of the mall. There's a glitch back there, and we'll figure out how to fix it.
Yeah, Mark, Woodrow Associates studied that line, and we know where the glitch is, and we kind of handed off our information to Alan Mason at Carroll Engineering, and whatever information or studies you have, I would suggest that you forward to him when you think the time is appropriate. But everybody's aware of where the glitch is, and it's in our viewpoint, it's complicated. So we would love to, see what your team has come up with as a solution.
When we get the land development, we'll be glad to, Lon. Get us the land development and we'll do it. Now we'll give it to you. We'll be glad to show it to you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lonnie. Appreciate your input. Vernon, do you have any questions at this time?
No, they did a good job of explaining it. So, no questions at this point.
Tom?
No, no questions.
Tony?
Well, just a couple things. I mean, trying to compare to office, the apartment buildings or assisted living facilities, neither of those uses amount to like 503 units. You don't see assisted living units at 500 units. You don't see motels at 500 units. And I think intensity is one of my concerns, just looking at that kind of 503 units is a lot of cars, a lot of traffic. And that's some of the concern I have.
Well, let me suggest this. The issue that we're dealing with at this point, what the courts have said is we're about use. That's all we're coming to the zoning hearing board is about use. It's not about land development. It's not about how many apartments. We will get to that later, but with all due respect, we're entitled to a hearing on whether or not our use is appropriate. We have spent months and months making sure that if our use complies, that we will meet all of the area and bulk regulations, setbacks, the side yards, all of that. And we believe that we comply with everything. And when you talk about traffic, I avoided it tonight, but I could have Joe tell you about, and I think he did, prepaid millions of dollars to widen Germantown Pike 7, 8 years ago when we were all choking going down Germantown Pike at 4:30 or 5 o'clock. And they did it based on projections of the amount of traffic that would be generated by the mall. Well, as you know, we've lost tenants galore. So if we're going to talk about, if we're going to get a fair hearing with regard to traffic and what the intensity will be, I will be glad to show that, Mr. Stipa, glad to show that. But we
I appreciate that, Mr. Kaplan. The concern I have though is when you use in order to accommodate your use, you're citing situations where you have a motel or assisted living facilities, of which in order to apply that to this building, okay, you have to at least consider the intensity of the use. Okay,
Well,
it's a byproduct of what you're projecting here.
Well, I will tell you that I've read about 20 cases, and the courts have laid out a procedure for looking at the use.
Okay.
And it only is the use. The ordinance says that the use has to be, substantially similar or generally similar to existing uses. It doesn't talk about traffic. Look, Mr. Stipa, we have provided 1,000 parking spaces here. There's no way in the world that we need 1,000 parking spaces. We've honored that because that's what your ordinance says. And it's 40% higher than is needed, and the size of the building could come down if it weren't for that. But look, our job is not for me and you to argue about the law. Mike Clark and I will argue about the law from a legal point of view. We just wanted to show you what was proposed. So
Very good.
Thank you for your comment.
Thank you.
Do you have anything else, Tony?
No, I'm okay. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Monica, do you have anything?
No, no questions.
Thank you. Greg?
I'm just going to reiterate Tony's comments and hold those off for now, as I have no questions on use, but only on afterwards with traffic and volume.
I appreciate that. Michael?
Yeah, I'd reiterate the density issue. I think one of the issues here too is that it was mentioned that this is at the corner of Main and Main. I think one of the problems though is that you're pigeonholed here. You're kind of shoehorned into a dead end, if you will, and that one of the main streets is you can't cross it because it's a major highway. So there's got to be a lot of traffic created because of that as well. I mean, at least traffic going in one direction or two directions, because that's going to be the only access and way out of this development. So the other thing is, I think, you know, if you're there as a pedestrian as well, pretty much you have the mall as your destination and not much else. I don't know what that means, but you know, it would be, I think, ideal if there were more maybe amenities that sprung up outside of maybe you know, what would eventually be part of maybe a larger sort of complex, if you will. Maybe another question too is has there been any thought about the impact on the school system?
Well, I've been through this many, many times in the last 4 years. So has Joe, and so has Seth. And the issue, and what all the statistics show is that there are very few children in the 4- and 5-story buildings. And I believe that you'll find that in a luxury apartment like this, you're not going to get families that are going to want to live on a mall. But Seth, maybe you better answer that, or Joe better answer that, because it's a legitimate question.
It is a legitimate question. It's a question we get all the time. And Mark is absolutely right. You know, everybody used to refer to this quote Rutgers study that showed, you know, when it came to market rate multifamily housing, that the number of school children that were introduced into a district was really de minimis. Last year, they actually redid the study because they broke it down even further based on housing type, based on the type of apartment and sort of the luxury nature of the apartment. This is going to be considered very high end. This is an expensive building to build. And lo and behold, the more expensive the apartment, the newer the apartment, and in many ways the higher rise, those numbers went even further down. It's not really, you know, Plymouth Township is a wonderful township and that's a great housing stock. If a family wants to move into Plymouth Township, they'd be better off buying a single family home.
And Mark, I could let me comment on the traffic too. Just it's the same thing where, you know, just if using Institute of Transportation Engineers statistics, which all of the traffic engineers in our industry use, statistically, single family homes in a residential development, they generate on a peak hour basis, basically one trip per unit on a peak hour basis. So 500 units in a residential development would be 500 trips. If you go to an apartment complex that's under 4 levels, the trip generation is more like 2 trips for every 3 units. Once you get above 4 level, you know, meaning it's less per unit. Once you get above 4 levels, the trip generation drops more. It drops more to 2 trips for every 5 units. So if you can figure that, if you have 10 units, it's 4 trips. So basically for 500 units, it's only 200 trips compared to a single family residential development where 500 units would be 500 trips. And the reason is, again, there's you know, fewer children and you know, a lot of times you have elderly people, even though it's not restricted elderly, but it's a whole different workflow resident. And statistically, this complex would generate about 200 trips during the peak hour. And again, the mall generates over 2,000 trips in the peak hour, and it's reduced from what it used to generate close to 2,300. And I'm talking about the afternoon peak hours compared to Saturday, which is a lot higher, but apartments don't generate as much on Saturday. So just comparing the afternoon peak hour, it's not a lot of traffic relative to the size of the building, and it's still below what the mall used to generate when Germantown Pike was only 4 lanes, and now it's 6 lanes. All our level of service analysis shows that there's very little increase in delay when you add the traffic from this complex. We're talking about a delay of 6 seconds or less increase, and total increase at the driveways of roughly 2%. It's not a lot of increase in traffic nor increase in delay. And our traffic study shows that, which we'll present, I guess, at the land development presentation, I guess.
You know, I'm sorry, Mike, is that your name? Mike?
Yes, right.
So you raised a very interesting point in what you questioned, and I would like to bring back Dan, who's really the mall guru. And you said, wouldn't it be nice if there were other amenities and activities to create, I guess, a greater sense of place? And Dan, you still here, I hope?
Yes, I'm still here, and thanks for bringing it up, Mark. I was going to sit and wait till we have an opportunity to deal with it at a different body, but I think if you look at what we've done with the different uses that are there are many uses that we've introduced to the mall, either interior with a Dave & Buster's or a Legoland, which you may or may not frequent, right? Everybody's got their own desire and likes and dislikes. Most recently adding a Miller's Ale House and an Edge Fitness, in addition to maybe traditional retail that's there. Adding a Whole Foods, best in class in the grocery business, different than you would find at almost any other regional mall as part of the mall. You know, you add Firebirds and PF Chang and Firebirds expansion area. I mean, so I think if you step back for a moment, you would kind of recognize that there have been a number of additions to the mall that have changed the environment, that if you were living there on premise, you would have lots of opportunities different than a quote unquote traditional regional mall would have offered you. And in looking at it, you know, we see that continuing as the uses will continue to change on the property and give you plenty of opportunity to explore and experience different situations that are non-traditional regional mall.
And I would like to add one thing that I've heard Dan say a number of times as we've tried to work through Preet's portfolio. We've got that 2-level mall there that was created in a different time. And Preet's worked all around it and has put in there, like Dan said, non-traditional Dave & Buster's, Legoland, etc. We don't know what the future is going to bring, but we know it's not going to be traditional retail there. We are the first to admit that we're working through this on a day-to-day basis. And it is totally in our best interest to try and do exactly what Mike said, find some more uses that will attract people to this mall. And maybe the shape of that building will change, we don't know. But in all candor, it's an ever-changing environment and the uses keep changing. And we wish we could tell you that if the township permits us to do this apartment, we will fill up all of these different spaces with particular uses. If we knew that, if we could predict the future for that, neither Dan Herman nor I would be in the shopping center business. We'd be betting on the stock market. So I don't mean to treat it lightly. I want you to understand what our problem is. And since I live here and I work here, it's our community's problem. And we have got to protect the tax base that's here. I got the wrong hat on, but I will just tell you that from the overall good of the community, Preet needs to be helped and incentivized to make a huge investment in this property. And the only thing that makes sense at this point is multifamily. And we hope that if we can bring the multifamily, it will then attract others, and we will recreate this mall in a different way, but in a viable way on a long haul. So I'm sorry for speechifying, but I live here too, and I know what can happen. We have seen what has happened to some of the malls that Dan has talked about. They weren't in the right place at the right time. The Granite Run Mall is a disaster. It was foreclosed for $100 million, and Bruce Toll went in and bought it for next to nothing. It is, well, you go there and you'll see it yourself. We don't want that to happen. So with that, Mr. Chairman, our presentation is done. If there are any more questions, we would love to hear them.
Michael, do you have anything else?
No, that's it. Thanks, Vince.
Thank you. So the issue before us is one of use, as has been stated several times. And I agree with what Tony's presented in terms of the retirement complex. This use is not like in character because there is not ingress and egress, certainly not to that level that's being suggested. Also, what's been suggested is that this could be a motel type arrangement. It clearly states in the ordinance that there is ground level access. So again, it does not reach this level that's being presented here right now. Currently, there is unfortunately no use for that current property in terms of comparison. We have seen in Plymouth Township that people will move here for the school district, and they will move into other arrangements, perhaps arrangements that aren't their preference, where they would prefer a single home. And I'm specifically referring to the park complex, where it had been stated that that organization would not house many children and also would not have much vehicular traffic, where we have seen that as well. So at this point, Dave, do you have any comments?
I'm just looking at section 1100R, specifically the last line. Even if we said it was the same general character, it basically states further provided that no trade or business shall be permitted which is either noxious or hazardous. And considering we're just dealing with the use here, I would contend if these apartments are put in right now, with no improvements to the sanitary sewer system, that would be pretty hazardous to the sanitary sewer system at this time. I'm just throwing that out there, that's all.
Understood. Thank you. I'm not sure if there's anyone in the audience who has any comments. Okay, so do we have anyone in the audience who's in favor of the application? Do we have anyone in the audience who's opposed to the application? Hearing none, do we have a motion? Okay, I'd like to make a motion that we not approve the request for this use. Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor of not approving the use signify by saying aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
All right, if all the planning agency members can stay on for a second.
We have to approve the minutes from last time.
Oh, well, yeah. That too.
Motion to approve the minutes.
Did everyone look at the minutes?
I did.
Are they good?
Sure.
You're good, Dave.
All right. So they're approved. All right, great.
And I want to thank everybody for hanging in there. This is a little old school. This isn't real old school. Long ago and far away, I'm sure Lonnie remembers this. I don't know if you've had the pleasure, Dave. We would go to midnight, maybe later. That's when we instantiated the 9:30 cutoff. So
I made it to 10:30 or 11 once or twice. That was about it.
the next day's brutal. That's all I have to say. But I want to thank everybody for hanging in there. Their attentiveness, that was very detailed, which was appreciated. But at the same time, it went into much more than use at this point, which is why I wanted to bring it back to that. I just wanted to explain myself for a moment. So thanks, everybody. Dave, you got anything else?
Yeah. We're trying to do, I know we've been saying this forever, everything electronically these days. So if anyone needs a hard copy of any land development plans, does anyone, when they come in, does anyone need an actual hard copy of those big bulky plans? If I can just, Lonnie, you don't count, you're getting them anyway. But I'm going to just email them out. Now, my one question is, usually before these land developments come before you guys for approval, we usually have several revisions to the sets of plans. You always have the original set, but usually by the time it gets to when you guys are going to hear it, there's been several revisions to the plans. Would you like me, whenever, like a week before it's being heard, at that point send out the plans, or do you want them right at the beginning? That's my real question.
I would say.
I think if you send them out, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I'd say send them out after the revisions are all made.
Okay.
I was going to say that as well. I think,
too.
as long as we get the most up-to-date
Right.
version right before the meeting, that's fine.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
And we'll have the other information in advance, pertaining to the location and the issue.
Right. When the application comes, yeah, that's my other, like, when the application comes in, I guess, you know what, the more I think about it, Lonnie, stop looking at me while I'm thinking out loud here. What I'm going to do is send them out electronically when it comes in, and then whatever, a week before it's actually heard, I'll send you the most revised plans, all by email, or if there's a Dropbox somewhere, if the files are too big, we'll set that up. But that's my plan at this point. If anyone's against it, just let me know, but that's what I plan on doing.
No, that's fine, because I didn't get tonight's materials until today.
I have no idea about that.
I think it might have been stuck in with the ballots or something, and then got rediverted.
There you go.
Dave, if you could
First
point
part
out
was-
maybe too what major changes were made, that would be helpful, I think. If
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Or at least-
that's fine too.
Like label the email that this is the final set. In
Right,
case there's multiple.
yeah,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
just
happening.
any important changes that
Like what I
would-
do is like a week before the planning or 5 days before the planning age, I'll email you out the most recent review letters.
Mhm.
And what I'll do is have the most recent set of plans at that time. I'll email out
Okay.
as well.
And those letters usually have any changes that have been addressed or what have you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. You don't want to see the first round of review letters. Sometimes Lonnie has a 7-page review letter that you don't want to read. So.
Right.
We like the
Thanks,
2
Lonnie.
pagers with will comply. That's what we look for.
Is that your big announcement, Dave? I'm a little disappointed. I thought you were going to say you're resigning the position of zoning officer to take a position as assistant general manager with the Dodgers.
I can do that. I've sent my resume to the Dodgers in the past. So.
Just remember, Dave, you resign, you work for free. I'm just saying.
But thank you everyone for hanging on this long. Appreciate it.
Good to
Good
see
night.
everybody.
Good night.
Night.
Be safe,